On a winter restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. You give light, you unlock, you bring light to the darkness. You give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you and all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you,
What is up, StuCo? Man, I am Aaron Kohler, and I am one of the StuCo directors at the Yellow Box, and we are so glad that you're here tonight. Man, as I hear those songs, I can picture you guys, especially Zeal. Love that song. Can picture you guys jumping at summer camp, jumping at Blast, having a good time. Man, I hope you guys are enjoying the worship experience. Fantastic job with the student band tonight. Love all of that. Well, man, we are so glad that you guys are on StuCo Online tonight, whether you're watching on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or you're listening on the radio. However, we're so glad that you're here. Man, it'd be awesome if if StuCo had a radio show. Can you imagine? That would be fantastic. Man, would you listen to a StuCo radio show? Can you imagine that? What would our call letters be? We'd be WSTU, the Stew. Yeah. And we'd have a late night show with Victor. Can you imagine him singing you to sleep every night? That'd be amazing. I would definitely tune in for that. Well, however you're watching tonight or listening, whether it be on the radio or YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, we're super glad that you're here because tonight we are having a very, very important conversation, one of the most important conversations that I believe that we can have. We've kind of put all our regular StuCo stuff on hold for tonight and maybe even the next couple of weeks so we can have a conversation around racism, equality, and reconciliation. And you guys know all the things that have been going on over the past 10 days or so, but we know that this is a super important conversation for us to be having because I'm going to be totally honest with you. I know that if we're ever going to see change in our nation, in our state, in our counties, in our area, in our communities, if we're going to ever see change when it comes to this conversation about racism in our world, it is going to start with you. And we need you. We need your voice. We need you to speak up. We need you to stand up. We need you to act because if the world is ever going to change, it's going to start with you. And that's why we're having this conversation tonight and over the next couple of weeks and why it's so important that you are involved in it. And we've talked earlier about inviting people to be in on this conversation. There's an arrow. You can share the link, however you want to do it. Invite people to be in this conversation because racism will never change unless you speak up, unless you stand up, unless you act and make a difference. And we as StuCo directors, as StuCo leaders, we believe in you and know that you can change the world, specifically when it comes to this conversation. So we're going to have that conversation tonight and over the next couple of weeks because we know that it's not just a 1 week conversation. You're never going to change the world by just talking about something once. We need to talk about it again and again, but we're also never going to change the world by just talking about it. We have to stand up. We have to act. We have to speak up. So tonight we're going to have the opportunity to do that. In just a few moments, we're going to have just a conversation. And we have a couple StuCo leaders at the Yellow Box. Her name is Haven Denson and her brother Kiva. And we're going to have a conversation with them. And we need your input. We need your questions. We need your opinions. We need your statements alongside of what they're going to share with us tonight. And then immediately after that, I'm excited that we're going to send you off to small groups and we're going to continue this conversation. Now, I know this is a really, really big conversation. It can be tough. So I want to give you just a couple of guidelines as you go into small group. I think these guidelines are great for small group every single week, but especially when we're having a difficult conversation like this, when we're talking about this. Now, as your small group leader, whoever your small group leader is, as they're asking questions, as they're talking through this, I want to encourage you to actively engage. Be engaged in this. Pay attention. Listen to what they're saying. Really focus on that. Make sure your face is in the screen so they can see you, so that they know you're listening, so that you're engaging in that way. But also, it's really, really important that you always respect other people. Respect their opinion. If you disagree with it, that's okay. We can still be respectful of others. But listen, as you're in small group and other people are talking, listen to understand. Don't just listen to hurry through so that you can talk about your opinion. Listen to understand what other people in your small group are saying. And then anywhere along the way, if you're ever confused or you don't understand something, just speak up. Raise your hand, however you want to do it. Ask your small group leader, hey, I just don't understand this. And that's okay. And at the end of our time tonight, Bobby Klinkert is going to be talking about how you're going to have an opportunity to text in any questions that you may have. And over the next couple of weeks, we're going to answer those questions. Next week, we're going to have a panel of people who are going to be talking through your questions. So ask your questions. If you don't understand something, ask. That'll be really important. And then all along the way, provide helpful, provide supportive information and comments. We're not here to belittle or rip on anybody's belief. We are here to be supportive, and we want to encourage you to do that. Now, one of the takeaways for this week, we're not just having this conversation tonight, but we're going to keep this going. And I will encourage you to stay connected to StuCo.online, because all week we're going to be posting resources and different things that you can engage with, from documentaries to articles to read to different things to post. And we want to encourage you to be a part of that. One of the things that I'm really excited about, one of our StuCo directors, Brandon, is going to be leading a time of lament, and how we really focus on that and how we can mourn the things that are happening around us. And we want to encourage you to please be a part of that. Make sure you're tuning in all week to our devotionals, or just seeing the posts that are at StuCo.online. So make sure you check that out. Well, without further ado, I'm going to send you over to Bobby and Haven and Kiva for our conversation about race tonight. Here we go.
This is not my gospel that builds these walls between us, drawing borders that separate, raising flags of supremacy, empires of hate in the name of freedom. This is not my gospel that casts the immigrant out, pulling mothers' urgent hands from the cries of their children, expelling souls to isolation because of the color of their skin, their sexuality, the gender, the class, the nation they live in. This is not my gospel that spits on the face of God, lashing his image with words of rejection, warmongering, dominating the weak, diminishing salvation to a conditional thing, while hope lies lost and bleeding, weeping for relief. This is not my gospel that turns communities inwards, planting distrust in their hearts towards the beauty of difference, labeling neighbors as enemies and defining us by division. This is not my gospel with its eyes full of pride, when injustice is clothed in lies, when grace is caged, we face the great divide, humanity displaced from love. My gospel is love, who crossed the chasm between heaven and earth, speaking worth to all in endless benevolence. Love who sat in the dirt with the rejected, erasing their shame with the touch of acceptance, who reached for those society deserted, embracing the leper, the filthy, the hurting. Love who clutched the souls of his rivals in nail-pierced hands, holding them free from hell's vicious venom, declaring them brother, sister, cherished, forgiven. Love who tore the temple veil, divine grasping flesh, flesh clutching divine, crying, you are mine, precious mankind, awake from your slumber and open your eyes to love. Who walked through the walls, crossing the divide with burning passion, calling for those who have lost their place, breaking tomb after tomb after tomb to reveal a world of eternal embrace. This is my gospel. This is the cry heard in the night of unrest, clutched close to heartbroken chests, crying, reach for me, reach past the borders, reach to the wounds that have torn us apart. Plant seeds of compassion where malice has grown. Throw your arms open and welcome the forsaken home. Break down the walls that hate has raised. Turn your eyes to the face of the shame, then realize that it is mine. It is yours. We are one, reborn and remade. Let the stars fall, let mercy cascade, let the heavens pour. I gave you my all, I will give it again and again and again. I throw down my kingship, I throw down my fame, to be with you in the rejection, to hold you in the pain. You are not the outsider, nor a child of shame. Let the depths proclaim to the heights above that you are loved.
Hey, what's up, StuCo Online? Welcome, and we are so glad that you're joining us tonight because we have a super special night planned for you. We actually have Kiva and Haven Denson here with us to lead us through some of the conversations that we're going to have tonight. Super grateful for your time and for your leadership. I think all of us have been tuned in to what's been happening in our country and across the world over the course of these last 9 days with the murder of George Floyd by Officer Derek Chauvin and 3 other officers that were also standing by. This has swept across the country and again across the globe in terms of the effects. And we're seeing thousands and thousands and even millions of people respond to some of these injustices that we're seeing today. And we wanted to, number one, address them here as a student community, but also talk about what it looks like for us to personally become more engaged in those conversations and become more engaged in that cause. Because, not only is it something that as humans that we should all be advocating for, but it's biblical too. And so Kiva and Haven are going to help lead us through that discussion and some of those next steps tonight. But before we get there are some people, believe it or not, in StuCo that might not know both of you. You do pretty much everything. You are a part of Kid City, you're a part of StuCo, you lead small groups, you're in technical arts, you lead worship. The list feels like it goes on and on. But in case there are people here that don't know you, tell us a little bit more about yourselves.
Yeah, so my name is Haven. That's my brother Kiva. We grew up going to the Yellow Box. I think we started when I was in first grade. And so we've been really involved even from elementary school. Like you were saying, we've been, involved in Kid City and the worship team and leading small groups to StuCo in the same ways. And so we really loved being involved with the church and loved everything that the Yellow Box has done for us. Currently, I am going to be a junior this fall at North Central College. And yeah, that's pretty much a little bit about me.
Yeah, and to introduce myself, like you said, I'm Kiva, and I started going to the Yellow Box when I was in Kid City at the time. I started in 4th grade, came all the way up through StuCo, junior high school, and then afterwards graduated, took a couple years off, worked at Chick-fil-A for the last 5 years, and now I'm also going into my junior year at Moody Bible Institute. Yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Moody, let's go. I obviously you guys have been closely in tune with what's been happening. And, I think for a lot of people inside of StuCo, for a lot of students especially, we've heard people talk about this like, okay, this feels kind of like it's out of nowhere. Like how did we get to a point where all of these people across the world are protesting after 9 days of just one thing happening? So I guess I wanted to hear from you, like how did we get here? How did we get to this point?
I think it's really easy to see this terrible situation that we're in right now and think that it all came from, that one incident, that one life that was lost. But in reality, I don't think that this is a new issue. I just think that there's new light being shined on the problems that we've faced for years. There have been many people, just like George Floyd, who have lost their lives and, it wasn't on video or, countless other reasons why they didn't get the justice that they deserved. But yeah, I don't think that it's a new issue in any way.
Yeah, and I would also say I honestly have been really impressed by the the way the world is responding to this incident, and I think it's really cool that a lot of people are coming together and saying like, "Hey, enough is enough. This has been going on for far too long," and there are a lot of things that the U.S. has to do to change, that state governments have to do to change, national government. Like there's a lot of different things that need to be different in order for us to really live up to the ideals that this country believes in.
Yeah, that is so true. So tell me a little bit about how you feel like, your story. I know, Kiva, you even wrote a post on Facebook last week where you opened up and shared a bunch of this. But can you share a little bit about how you feel like that history and your stories have led you to this point? And like when you see this happening in the world still, and then also, in conjunction, when you see people responding to this scale, what does that mean for you, and what does that feel like?
I'd say for me, I think it means something positive. I think people responding in that scale, and I think that even just over this last couple of days, I think we've seen stuff that's really unprecedented in the way that the state has responded. They responded by filing civil rights charges against the police department that was responsible for the death of George Floyd, and I think even the school system in the state broke their ties with the police department as well. And these are just things that are really unprecedented in cases like this. And I think it's incredible to see these steps being taken for the first time. And I hope it really has a lasting effect on the way we treat these incidents moving forward. So yeah, I think it's encouraging to see. Obviously, everything's not fixed now, and everything's not perfect, but I think it is getting better, and I think that's encouraging and hopeful to see.
Yeah, I think, one of the things I shared with our StuCo director team, like in full transparency, this has been incredibly eye-opening for me. And I don't say that with any sort of proudness. I think for so long, and again, not even like in a bad way, but for so long I've operated under this mindset of, I'm not a racist person in any way. I'm not racist. I don't act racist, but that's not enough. Like just not being racist is clearly not enough. There's a level of being proactive that is far deeper and far more profound, that is required of us as people, and also required of us as followers of Jesus. And Kiva, I think inside of your post, you did an awesome job connecting the dots, number one, to a lot of those things, but also, just being vulnerable in your own experience, the things that you've felt and the things that you've seen, even from, the close people around you.
Yeah.
So I wonder, would you mind sharing a little bit more about that post, what inspired that, and Haven, if I'd love for you to even comment too on some similar experiences or whatever experiences that you might have had that are related. And that post is something that we'll share in case you haven't read it yet, because it's so important that all of you spend 5 minutes reading what Kiva had to share. But would you mind just sharing a little bit here, and maybe summarizing a little bit, but also just talking to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, no, not at all. I think that just to summarize the post in a very short way, but then I also want to break down some specific points. But in summary, it is to say that there's a lot of change that is needed, and there's a lot of change that won't come until our voices as Black people are heard, and a lot of that comes from white people using their own voices to help us be heard. And I also address Christians especially. I think we should be leading that charge. And I think that it's really important for us to recognize that God calls us to, not like just quote scripture and have it memorized, but he wants us to act on it, and prayer is so powerful, but we can't just sit around and pray. I think it's really important that we remember that we are called to act, and we are called to reach out and lift up the silenced and the oppressed, and because God is a God of justice and he's a God of love. And I think that that is all throughout the Bible. And when you look at it, he's very clearly an empathetic God, but he's definitely a just God. And I think that that is something we can't forget, is especially the way we're called to act. And I think this is to start breaking down the post. That is one thing I touched on as well. Is that he wants us to act, and that he wants us to do so because it glorifies him when we do that. And I have had a lot of discussions recently and over the years where people have even said, like, okay, well, like people have said in response to like everything that's going on, they're like, well, the most important thing to do right now is to share the gospel. And obviously sharing the gospel, I'm never going to say is not like the most important thing to do as Christians in our lives, but you can do that by fighting injustice. I think doing that is exemplifying Jesus and the way he walked. And I think that you can lead with love and reach out and help and amplify the voices of like your Black brothers and sisters. And by doing so, you are emulating Christ. You're walking the way he walked. And, like Jesus was a friend to the immigrant and to the poor and to the hungry. He didn't turn a blind eye to them. And I think that that's so important to remember.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's difficult sometimes to even see where all these problems start. Sometimes it feels like we're living in two different worlds. And it can be hard for a lot of people who don't experience it to recognize that it's happening because it's not happening to them. But yeah, Kiva talks about things that he's experienced a little bit in his post as well. And I remember being like really little, like in elementary school or something, wondering if my friends looked at me differently because I'm Black or because I'm Mexican or because of how I look. I remember praying and like asking God, that my friends like actually like loved me for who I am. And that kind of thought of being worried about other people judging me for how I look, that kind of thought shouldn't even be on the mind of a little kid. There's so many times where people really think that they're saying something that no ill intentions at all, and even that they're being encouraging, but from another perspective it could be really hurtful. I've had friends growing up tell me that they don't see me as Black, or that I basically act like I'm white, or things like that. Or it's the phrase that people often say that I don't see color and things like that. And I understand how that can sound good. Oh, I don't see you as any color. I see you as a human. But the reality is I am Black. Like, that's who I am. And if you don't see that part of me, then you don't fully see who I am. And so I think there could be the best of intentions. And like you were saying, all these people, I don't think that are necessarily racist. Of course, I don't think that all white people are racist or anything like that. That's absolutely not the case. But you can have the best intentions and still really hurt other people. And so that's why I think these conversations are really important to have.
Yeah, I mean, I also think like one thing that I definitely want to point out is a lot of people, and I think this is going to be a hard thing to understand and hear, but it's so important that people recognize it, is that it's really, really easy to grow up in a bubble, just surrounded by probably number one, who's there when you're first born is your parents. Like, you are from birth influenced by what they believe and what they know, and then that is just how you grow up. And I think it can be shocking to hear things that contradict what you've grown up knowing. And there was somebody that reached out to me. I don't even know them personally. They're like a friend of a friend, but they saw my post, and she said that she had the conversation with her parents the night before she read my post, and they told her, sure, racism exists, but it doesn't happen in Naperville. And so I think that that's something that a lot of people are surprised by, and they just aren't aware, that this happens, that this sort of stuff happens like in your own neighborhoods. Like I live right on the border of Aurora and Naperville. Like if you know where the Chick-fil-A I work at is, I'm like 2 minutes from there, so I'm really close to like where a lot of students that go to like the Yellow Box Naperville live. And so I think it really can be a surprise to students to hear that this stuff happens so close to home. And I think that, but just the reality of it is that it is a real issue, and it's a real thing people experience, even if you aren't aware of it. And I think that has to be enough for people to be willing to respond and to want to take action.
Yeah, both of you even talked about, the idea that there are so many things, that so many experiences that you've had, so many feelings that you felt that people like myself with white skin just don't even know. Like we would never even know about some of those things if we're not paying attention, because those things aren't things that we experience ourselves. And so what would you say to somebody who was kind of like in the same boat I was, who would say, I'm not a racist, but at the same time isn't taking that next step to be more proactive about fighting injustice? How does that person kind of break that cycle of ignorance is probably the right word, but how does that cycle get broken for somebody?
I think the first thing that's really important is to just start paying attention. Like you said, it's hard to see that things are happening right around you, but they definitely are. And so I think maybe talking with some of your friends of color that having conversations with them and actually listening and asking them about their experiences, and then having conversations with your own family and talking to them, and just sharing what you've learned. But yeah, I think just opening your eyes a little bit to what's going on around you. It's really hard to see if it's not specifically happening to you. But I think that's why you have to be intentional about getting out of your bubble, getting out of your comfort zone, and actively seeking out other people's experiences.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of echo that, but it's also something I mentioned in my post. But I think that people have sometimes a problem with like the phrase Black Lives Matter, and people want to respond with things like All Lives Matter. But I mean, I think the best analogy I think I heard to like really kind of explain like what that sounds like when you say things like that is like, to respond with All Lives Matter is like being in a neighborhood where you're surrounded by houses, and there's one house that's on fire, and you're busy like spraying water on your own house, and it's not on fire. But you're like, well, obviously all houses are equal, they all matter the same, but this house is not on fire. Like clearly you need to be focusing on the house that's on fire right now, the house that's hurting, the house that's in pain, the house that's not receiving the help that it needs. That's the one that needs to be our focus right now. And that is, I think, why it matters to say Black Lives Matter, why that matters to recognize. And I think that it also, like, because that's important, I think it's also important to recognize that Black Lives matter more than anyone's discomfort. And I think that's why action is so important, especially even though it is an uncomfortable thing. And I recognize that this is something new to a lot of the people that are probably hearing my voice in this very moment. It is difficult, and I'm not at all here to invalidate that. But I think that it just has to be something that we're willing to do, again, especially as Christians, to step outside our comfort zone and really help the people that need help.
Yeah. And just again to like echo what Kiva was saying, even if you look at it from like a biblical perspective, I think that it's something that as Christians is really important to recognize and to say Black Lives Matter, because I saw a pastor on Instagram post something, and he referenced Luke chapter 15, where the parable is told about Jesus, or about the woman leaving the 99 coins to find that one missing coin. And of course, the 99 other coins were just as important and just as valuable, but she had to focus on the one that was missing, the one that was lost. And so I think this is something that's, as Christians, is really important that we advocate for.
That's so good. So true. Yeah, I love, I love talking about all of us are made in the image of God. And even hearing from Community Freedom Pastor Eric Dorsey, he talked about this idea that race and culture is like seeing all those different races and cultures is like the full expression of God. And the only way to truly know God is to truly begin to know cultures that are different from your own. And so that's so good. Thanks for sharing that. I know even for me, like part of that process and part of that journey was like removing barricades, which in my case were almost like these unknown or even unconscious gut reactions to certain things that were said. It's like, okay, we have to recognize that we don't know what we don't know, in that the experiences and the feelings of others, those are real. And whatever bias that we come in with, or whatever thought that we come in with, or whatever statistic we feel like we're coming in with, like the feelings and experiences of others trump those things. And so paying attention to that for me has been incredibly valuable. And so thank you so much for speaking in to that too. I think it's important to hear that it's important to start, more important than getting everything right initially. And so even as we are beginning this conversation, some people maybe for the very first time tonight, I think that removes a lot of the unknown and the fear of the unknown from that conversation. And so, you talked about this uncomfortable feeling and that being a good thing, right? And I think, that's even something that I feel. I think it's something a lot of people in the world feel, again, in a good way. What are some ways to respond to that uncomfortableness within each of us? I know we talked a little bit about listening and learning, and we're going to be posting resources throughout the week where you can look and learn and listen to other stories and educate yourself. But like, what are some other ways even that us as a student community can be better at responding?
I think even just having these conversations is a huge way that, in these conversations may be very uncomfortable for a lot of people because they've never had these conversations before. And so I think that sometimes we underestimate just like talking to each other and talking to our family, but that is so huge. Just like we're doing right now, sharing our experiences. Like you said, it's so much more important than any statistics or facts that we can throw at you, because these are real people, these are our actual lives. And so, yeah, I think having those conversations, although it can be very uncomfortable because like you just said, one, you are going to get some things wrong. You're going to make mistakes. And that's scary. As humans, we don't like to fail. But that is a part of life. And that's something that we definitely just have to accept. And we have to be forgiving with ourselves and have grace with ourselves. And whenever we fall, just realize the most important thing is to just keep trying. So I think that it's important to have those conversations and to be forgiving with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Conversations are such a huge part of it. And I think that it matters that you have them no matter how many people you think you're going to reach, even if you like say like, like maybe you have like 10 Instagram followers, but you still want to post something to show like where you stand, and to stand in solidarity with us. Like, I think that it's still important to do that to start conversations, like, because, and I also think it's important for people to know what you believe, like, and who you stand with. And it's not about posting to look good ever, it is about making sure that the voices that need to be heard, the voices of Black people that aren't being heard, that their voices are being amplified, and that you can make them louder by supporting them, And I think that can also be tricky to do, and it can be hard to know where to start. But I think that that there's a lot of resources available. Like Bobby said, we'll definitely be sharing some stuff, but like there are people that you can follow whose voices need to be heard, whose voices need to be made louder. And they're the ones that are trying to bring us together right now. And I think that's the most important thing, is following and supporting the voices of people that are trying to unite us.
Awesome. I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but are there names or podcasts or videos, any sort of resources that you would recommend just off the top of your head that students can start looking into now?
Yeah, I mean, for me, for one thing, like, just a few months ago, sorry, not a few months ago, a few years back, I like hadn't even realized like Martin Luther King Jr. A lot of people heard of him, but he's got a son who's like very active on like Twitter and social media, and I think following him is really important, because he's saying a lot of the right things and he's not letting voices fall silent. So I mean, for that, I mean, that's one easy thing you can do, is like if you're on Twitter, follow him and like just read the things he's saying, because they are really valuable during this time.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different outlets of media that are really important. On Netflix, there's a movie called 13th, and that's about the 13th Amendment. And it's a documentary, actually, and so it's super helpful. I've heard a lot of, I mean, I've watched it and it's really good, but I've heard a lot of my friends so that it was very educational for them. And so I definitely recommend that. There's also a movie called The Hate You Give. That one is based on a book, and it's completely fictional, but it's based on some of the topics that we're talking about today. And so although it's fictional, I think it does spread really great messages and does share what it's like to be Black in America. And so those are a couple movie recommendations for you.
Yeah, and actually to add even one more, I think it came out late last year, I think, but it was called Just Mercy. I think it's either Sony or Warner Brothers. I can't remember. I think it's Sony, but they just made it free to view. And I think that one's huge. Really impacted me when I watched it, honestly. Like, I went to go see it with like 5 other friends, and like by the time we left the theater, like literally everybody was crying. Like, and it's not a light movie by any means. It's really heavy, but it also, like, I was blown away by like seeing things that I had felt and experienced had been like captured on camera, and I was like, whoa, like people can see this, like I'm seeing this, and it's all like, and the movie takes place, like, it's not even during present day. It's I think a couple decades ago, but it's a true story. And I think that's really important to also recognize that, like, stuff that was true 20 years ago is still, it's still a very accurate reflection of things I've grown up feeling and going through today, and I think that one, yeah, that's a really, I would definitely encourage watching that movie as well. Yeah.
If you like reading better too, that one's also a book. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super helpful. Awesome. And we'll be posting these on all our accounts, so you can have a better idea of where to go. We'll also post some more. And I think, again, the thing to reiterate is, as a student community, let's take a step, and let's do that starting today, whatever that might be for you. I think for all of us, it's probably conversations, right? Haven, you've touched on that a lot. We need to have more conversations about this. I think there's so many video resources, podcasts, even just people around our church that want to be a resource and that want to help all of us as a StuCo take next steps. So that's one of the things that we want to do is take another step forward. And so I guess to close, is there anything that you want to add, any closing thought before we get ready to go to small groups?
Um, I think that it's just important to reiterate how important it is to just make an effort and be proactive in these beliefs. A phrase that's been going around a lot is it's not enough to just not be racist. You have to be anti-racist. And I think that's just really important. That effort at whatever level you're at in learning and educating yourself, just trying is just really important. And so I would encourage just to keep trying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to grow and learn more during this time. 'Cause we're all learning, like even me, like there's more that I can learn and more that I want to learn and more that I'm actively pursuing because I want to make sure that this is something I can be educated on to help other people be educated more on it as well. If I don't know anything, I can't teach anything. So it's definitely something that I think we're all learning together. And yeah, I mean, I may know a lot about it, but like I said, there's still more I can discover. So yeah, I think it's also important to like not be afraid to ask any questions you might have because I think like Haven said, like it's easy to be afraid of failure, but I mean that's just a human thing. But I also definitely want everybody to feel comfortable to ask any questions you have because I mean that's part of why we're here is I think we're making ourselves available to be willing to help answer those questions because I think it's awesome that people are willing to change and grow. So there's no bad questions. Like we want to hear everything, and I think as long as the intention is growth, that's awesome.
Awesome. Well, one of the things that we want to do too is we know that there are a ton of questions. We also know that there are people around the world and people even in our community who are like, all right, we're ready. Come on, let's go. But we also want to acknowledge that this is a process, right? Haven, you mentioned this to our leaders. This is something that it's not like we walk away from this meeting together and it's like, all right, we're educated, we're equipped, let's go. We're completely ready. It's an evolving conversation and, it's a daily investment and it's a daily choice to invest. And so I just want to make sure, everybody watching understands like, this is the beginning of that. And, it's so encouraging and it's so hopeful to hear both of you talk about this. But we can't let it stop here. Like this is a daily investment. And so, this is just a catalyst that leads into that daily investment, that daily choice on all of our parts. So one of the things we did want to do is there's going to be a phone number that comes up on the screen where students and leaders can text in questions they have. Maybe questions about this subject, questions about protests, questions about equality or injustice, whatever they might be. We want you to text those questions into this number. And then next week, we're going to take some time with Kiva and Haven and a couple others as well to start answering some of those questions. So make sure you don't miss that. Text that number at the bottom of the screen, your questions. It's anonymous, but we'd love to hear from you and we'd love to help you along as you continue to process and engage with this conversation. So Kiva and Haven, thank you so much for not only for being willing to have this conversation with me and with StuCo, but your vulnerability with this and also your grace. I think I speak for a lot of us in StuCo when I say that it hasn't been enough and it's still not enough, but that we are committed to being a community that stands with you, that stands with people of color, that stands up for their communities, and that is consistently and thoroughly engaged in this conversation and in systematic changes to this system. So we are committed to you. We're committed to this mission. This is a biblical mission, and we stand with you and are with you 100%. So thank you again for your grace, and thank you for your leadership in helping all of us be better.
Yeah, thank you for giving us this platform.
Yeah, for sure.
You guys are the best. Let's do this. Would you mind just closing us with a prayer?
Yeah, not at all.
Awesome. Thank you.
For sure. Dear Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you first and foremost for just this opportunity that we have to share our voices with students and with this up and coming generation. I know that your hand is over the conversations that we're having today, and I pray that it will continue to be present and something that people feel and recognize during small groups tonight. I just want your name to be glorified in everything we're doing here. And I think it's important to recognize that we can do that by growing and by learning how we can support each other as people, whoever we are. And I think especially as Christians, we have to remember that you've called us to act and that we should lead this charge in fighting injustice, and that we are to help the silenced and the oppressed as your followers, as Christ followers. So we ask for your strength, we ask for your courage, and just that we would continue to do the hard things, to do the uncomfortable things, to speak out and reach out and build one another up instead of tearing them down, and that we would also just become more aware of our own errors and the heart change that we need in order to grow and begin to do the things that you would have us do, that you've called us to do, God.
Yeah, God, I just want to thank you so much once again for giving us a church who cares about lifting up our voices. I want to pray once again that if there's anything not from you taking place in all of these conversations, that you would just remove that from the atmosphere. I pray that you are present, and I thank you in advance for, as Kiva said, having your hand on all of these conversations that we're going to be having today. God, I pray that you put the values on our hearts, the values that Jesus had, justice and love and unity, of grace. And I pray that we are able to come together as a church during this time, that America is able to come together, that the world is able to come together and fight for what's right in our world, God. I thank you for all of the opportunities that we've had to speak out and make a change. We ask for your strength in having difficult conversations, for your strength in getting out of our comfort zone. We realize that it's hard. These are really hard conversations that we're having. There are many people that we might disagree with. There are people that might not want to hear when we're speaking out for what's right. But God, I pray that you give us the strength to continue to do so anyway. I thank you once again for just giving us this amazing community of students who I know are looking forward to learning more about how they can be more like you, Jesus. And that involves these conversations that we're having right now. And thank you so much. In your son's name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Well, we are so looking forward to continue listening and learning, and we love you guys like crazy. Thanks so much.
What's up, guys?
Thank you.
All right. Again, a huge thank you to Haven and Kiva Denson for sharing part of their story and helping us as a church grow on this journey. I think this is a fantastic start to the conversation, but again, it's just that. It's a start. So we want to encourage you to be engaged all week on StuCo.online and next week. But we want to send you right off now to small groups so that you can engage in those conversations. So again, make sure you're being respectful and we're listening to other people and their opinions, and we encourage you to engage as best you can. Let's head off to small groups now.